Some places hold on to their patients long after the doors are closed. Tonight, I'm walking through the halls of a hotel turned asylum where the residents never really checked out. Welcome back to the Common Historian. I'm Jeremy, joined tonight by Josh Hurd, owner and steward of the Malvern Manor and co owner of the historic Fremont County Jail, to dig into the true history and hauntings behind both. Welcome, Josh. How are you tonight?
Thank you. I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem. I'm excited to kind of dig right in.
Oh, yeah.
So, how did you end up becoming the owner of the Malvern Manor?
So, oh, yeah. Like just about a decade's worth of crap is basically what happened. No, like it was interesting. Like when we first found Malvern, it was completely by accident. We were filming like my first documentary film, and we were just across the street at this place called the Classic Cafe. And it has its own like slew of paranormal happenings. And they were kind enough to say, bring the film crew and all that stuff and come and investigate. They didn't close down or anything like that. And there's also like a bar that's attached to the place. So it was a Friday night. Apparently a been a really rough week for a lot of people because they were drunk and loud and just annoying. And I'm like, there's no way that we can do this. There's no way with noise contamination and all that crap that we just can't do it. So I went outside and I was smoking an angry cigarette because night one of filming was screwed. And there was this guy that was standing outside and he was like, what's with all the cameras? And I'm like, crap. This guy's going to think that I am duty crap crazy. And I just told him, I was like, this is what we're doing. We're hunting ghosts, right? That's interesting. I don't believe in that crap, but I own a place and there's weird things that happen all the time. The place was like a hotel and a nursing home and then a group home for mentally handicapped people and all of that. And the place is like 10,000 square feet. There's all sorts of weird things that happen all the time. Again, I don't believe in this stuff, but I also can't explain it away. And so I was like, where is this place? It's just right there across the street. I'm like, pretty sure we just became best friends, you know what I mean? So it was really cool. So yeah, he was kind enough to then allow us in for the night. And it's super weird to look back at the first 10 minutes of my first film, because that's literally us stumbling upon this building that we would one day then call Malvern Manor. It's very odd. And then, now here we are. You know what I'm saying? Here we are. So warts and all, here we are.
So I know you mentioned it briefly, but can you go into a little bit of the history of the manor?
Yeah.
So
it's really interesting just looking at the building itself, the history of the building itself, just because it wore so many hats. It's like the fourth structure built in town. So it's like the whole dang town is popping up around this place, which is really cool. But initially out of the gate, primarily, it's a hotel. And it's a pretty grand structure, like the place to be, if you will, but also very multi-purpose as well. Primarily the hotel, of course, but they were also doing Sunday night dinners for every member of the community in this building. Like, really cool. There was a doctor's office on site. There was a restaurant on site. There was all of this stuff. They would even have traveling mediums and clerics and things like that. And so this building has been just steeped in paranormal crap since Jump Street, which is really cool. But so it runs as a hotel setting all the way up until the 1950s. So we're talking the late 1860s, 1870s, all the way through to the 1950s. So it had a pretty good run. And then at that time, it takes an odd turn and gets repurposed as a nursing home. Okay. And the nursing home, it only runs for a couple of decades. In the 1970s, the state of Iowa comes in and they deemed then that the hallways themselves weren't wide enough to support transporting patients properly. And so this is then where history becomes the most fascinating for geeks and nerds like me, right? The nursing home gets shut down and then they repurpose it yet again into this group home setting. What's fascinating about the group home setting is when you're looking at the clientele itself, right? Because the clientele is it's servicing any form of what they considered to be a mental disorder back then, which is vastly different than our consideration today. Trust me, I would have been locked up years ago. But it's interesting because like very common type things that we see all the time, right? That
Yeah.
we wouldn't necessarily consider to be a mental illness, so to speak. But we're talking people with Down syndrome, for an example, people with autism, people with drug and alcohol abuse, even. You know what I'm saying? Very common things that we see daily. Then, of course, there are uh, more exotic cases, if you will, right? People with DID, or what they used to refer to as multiple personalities. And then you even had people with schizophrenia. Shit, there were even murderers that were housed here. This is a very eclectic group of people like coexisting under the same roof. And it ran like that until 2005, which wasn't that long ago
No,
in
that
the
really
grand
wasn't that long
story.
ago.
It's very interesting. And so it's like it in the grand scheme of things, it's like just a drop in the bucket of time as to when this building was ultimately shut down. And then yeah, there were a couple people that did try to live in the building and all that stuff. They didn't make it very long, obviously, but it's interesting to me. But now here we are doing all
Yeah.
this fun crap.
Now, do you know the reason it stopped being a hotel? Was there a reason behind it or?
So the reason why it necessarily stopped being a hotel was business just wasn't happening.
Okay.
So
Assumed.
the, mainly that building was servicing the railroad at that time, right? And eventually the railroad just became a thing of the past. The tracks are still there, but they've been removed.
Yeah.
It's now a hiking and biking trail, which is really cool. It's really great for the area and people utilize it like crazy. But yeah, I think times were changing, so to speak, right? And
Yeah.
that's why. So yeah, more people, I should say less people started coming to Malvern, Iowa, and we're probably going more to Council Bluffs or Omaha, which is just a stone's throw away. So that's probably what
Sounds
they were
very
doing.
similar. My brother-in-law actually owns a very old
Yeah.
house that used to be a kind of a hotel, fine dining, and the railroad was just up the hill.
So
It's now an apartment building, but
yeah. So, but also back then, very convenient to have everything just right there. Very convenient. But and now, like you said, it's been repurposed,
yep.
into apartments.
And the fun thing is my sister-in-law recently, she sees that I do these interviews and she was like, "What can I do to check you out?" She says, "I'm here. I've seen and heard things in the apartment." She lives in one of the apartments
Oh,
and
that's
rents
cool.
from her brother. So I might have to go try to investigate there.
That would
You
be
guys,
so cool. You should definitely do that. You should definitely do that. That's so cool.
but that was just recently. She was like, "We've heard and seen a few things."
Man.
Now, I used to live in the back apartment for a couple of years, and we would hear things occasionally, but this was before I got really into paranormal much. So, we heard and saw a few things, but it wasn't anything major. But she said that she's hearing it starting to be regular. So I'm like, oh, she told me I could come investigate sometime. So I'll have to go do that.
That's well, that would be freaking awesome. Be like, yes, please.
The other thing I wanted to ask was when it was a nursing home and group home, what was the conditions, the conditions or how were they treated? How were they treated there? Was there any abuse or anything that
So
was documented?
the majority of the time that this ran as a nursing home, the majority of the time that this ran as even a group home, everybody was fine. Everybody was treated fine or whatever. However, there was one woman who ran the building, right? And her name was Geraldine Reed. Geraldine, and this is just what people have told me, I never had the opportunity or pleasure to meet her, that she was a hard ass with a heart of gold. Okay. She was the type of person that would see somebody out on the street and she would approach them and be like, do you have enough food? Do you need a place to sleep tonight? She was that kind of a person, a very giving, loving type of person. Geraldine ran this building until she was 87 years of age. Like,
Wow.
I mean, so she's basically forced into retirement. Okay. You know what I mean? And then her herself, she went to a group home, a nursing home, very similar to what this was back in the day, where she lived out her remaining years, right? Which was only a couple, if we're being honest. The gentleman that took over after Geraldine, this gentleman named Dave, that's as far as I'll go with that. But this guy was not, he was not well liked in the community. He was not well liked by the people that worked here. He was not well liked by the people that certainly lived here. A lot of verbal abuse, sometimes physical abuse. There was insurance fraud out the wazoo. He was the kind of guy that would approach somebody and be like, hey, I'm going to the store. Do you need anything? Sounds great. Sounds fine, right? On the surface, sounds fine. And these residents would be like, I need a pack of like cigarettes or something, right? That pack of cigarettes is going to cost $7. When in actuality, that pack of cigarettes only cost at that time about $3 or $4.
Yeah.
But he's going to pocket the rest of that. So he's just skimming money however he possibly can. Turns out that once this building was actually shut down for the final time, shut down under his tenure, neglect, abuse, insurance fraud, all at the top of the list. But it also comes out in the wash that this gentleman didn't even have the proper licensure to pass an aspirin to a patient.
Oh,
Now, his wife certainly did. Now, he was piggybacking off of that, but he himself never had any licensure to run a facility such as this was. So it's quite interesting to really go down that rabbit hole, but very interesting nonetheless. So, but for the most part, like, especially like when Geraldine was at the helm or whatever, everything seemed to be just fine. In fact, it was a good place to bring a loved one. So there's that.
now in my research, I think I came up with who was Gracie. Are you with Gracie?
Very. Gracie is one of my favorites, and she's like my built-in therapist because you get this. Some of us are like online. I hate the internet. I hate social media. I hate it all. I think it is the downfall of all civilization. However, it's also a necessary evil when you're doing things as we are, right?
Yeah.
Because you got to promote, you got to pimp the stuff, right? You got to do it, which sucks. So we deal with people all the time. And so Gracie is the one that I'll go to, and I'll just lie down on her bed and I'll be like, you're never going to believe this. And I'll just start word vomiting for an hour. It's so great. But Gracie herself, she was one of those that you would consider to be like an exotic type of patient, right? So Gracie had DID, again, what they used to refer to as multiple personalities. She was also schizophrenic on top of all of that. So a very chaotic mind state all the time for her. And it's like, your heart goes out to her because I can't imagine what it would be like to live like that.
Yeah.
And sadly, she probably didn't even know any different, if we're being honest. But I do know that they would hear male voices coming from Gracie's room. You cannot have a guy in a girl's room at all. And so the staff would be like, crap, who's in there? We got to go check that out. But they would go into her room and they would find it's just Gracie. She was able to manipulate and shift her voice to sound male, which is medically speaking fascinating because there are night and day differences between male and female vocal cords. It is fascinating. So how she was able to manipulate her voice to sound legitimately like a male is fascinating. Anyway, there was one evening in particular, there were 3 nurses that sat down with her in her room for just 1 hour. During this single hour, 60 little minutes, they documented 13 separate distinguishable personalities, which is, again, almost medically unheard of. The wheelhouse, anybody, for somebody suffering with DID, the wheelhouse is about 2 to 5 personalities.
Yeah.
They document 13 in an hour, where also somebody with DID who was going to present 13 alternate personalities would also take the majority of them weeks. And she does this in 60 minutes. I'm like, medically speaking, this woman is fascinating. And I don't know, it makes me wonder. Like, she probably could have been better serviced elsewhere, more than likely. Of course, now that's neither here nor there. But instead of being just here in Podunk, Iowa, like maybe a facility in Omaha probably could have better serviced her in some way, or I don't know. But she's one of my favorites, like by far. She's one of my, she gets feisty. And I love that. I love that. Oh my God. Yeah, I absolutely love that stuff. So I adore all of them here. Everybody seems to have their own personalities and their own gimmicks and ways that they're going to try and get under your skin or try to scare you in some way. And it's like, I'm on to your little BS here, guys. Like, I know what you're up to. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, can you tell me about, I think it's Susie, maybe?
Yeah.
I've heard about her as well.
So Susie is interesting for numerous reasons, and this will tie into what we were just talking about a few minutes back. So Susie was a middle-aged patient. Mentally speaking, she was probably closer to about 8 or 9 years of age. So in her room, when we first walked into this place, there were coloring books and activity books and all of this stuff that was just hers. It was all just here. And so, of course, we kept that. But now there's a ton more coloring books and activity books and things like that that people have brought to her as gifts, which is so cool. We openly invite people, if you want to color in those books, leave her a note or read her a story, do it. She absolutely loves just the company. She loves the interaction with other people. She is one of the sweetest that we have to offer here for sure. From the investigative side of everything, she fascinates me almost more than any of the others because the activity itself seems to be contained to her room, which is quite small. But everybody else around here seems to be fairly transient. They'll follow you and mess with you all day and night long. She stays put, or seems to. And she'll say things that are not disturbing, but a little disheartening, where it's like, oh, I can't leave. I'm scared. He won't let me leave. And I was like, okay, who is he? Who is this he character? Every single time that I've asked that question, it has come back with the same name every time, Dave, which is that guy, the guy that ran the place into the ground. I'm like, sweetheart, you don't have to worry about Dave anymore. Dave's not around. Dave's not here. Dave went to prison and then croaked. Dave's gone. So interesting, nonetheless.
You think Dave might have came back?
Maybe. And I can get into that too. So maybe. Like, it's interesting, right? So right about the same time that we're doing all this research and trying to just put together this freaking crossword puzzle that is this building, right? We start coming across this Dave character and all that and blah, blah, blah. But we also then, there's a weird shift that happens in this building. And I don't know exact date or whatever, but I can tell you basically about the right time if I go back on my YouTube videos, because that's about when it happens. But there is a major shift in this building. And this happened probably 5 or 6, give or take, years ago now. There's this entity that just shows up out of nowhere. The entity is referring to itself as number 1. And it's a very, like, scary type thing. So what would happen was, like, Gracie, for an example, right? This has happened numerous times in her room. I would be sitting in her room. doing like a spirit box type session, having very intelligent responses come through. And then all of a sudden it shifts. He's coming. I have to go. He's here. And then flatline, everything would just stop. And then in comes this nasty, gravelly, deep, nasty male voice that's telling you some of the worst things you've ever heard in your life.
Oh no.
But it's interesting to me because I was like, who are you? Number one, one, all this crap. I'm like, okay. And so I'm starting to kick this around more and more. I'm like, who is number one? Right. And I was like, if I'm thinking correctly, I'm like, anytime that any case study that I've ever read that has a spirit referring to itself as a number, it's never been good.
No.
You know what I mean? It's never been a good thing. So I'm like, this could suck. And then I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, I don't smell any sulfur. I don't have scratches or marks, or I'm not having horrible nightmares or anything like that. Nothing stereotypical is happening to me at all. And maybe I'm just too dense to figure it out. I don't know. But then I just got to thinking, I'm like, what if it's just a cocky ghost? What if it's just a cocky ass ghost says, I'm number one, blah, 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 or whatever? I'm like, okay, princess, here we go. Okay. But and then it's interesting to me because then every time that we would bring up, I'm like, I think I might know who you are. Because just judging by what everybody's told me, the past employees and even some former residents that told me about him specifically, is he was like, I rule the roost. It's my way or the highway. I'm blah, 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 puff out your chest type of crap. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like, maybe it's just him. And every single time that we bring up this Dave character, it's crickets from him, from this number one or whatever. I'm like, because we're on to you. We've got you. I swear it's him. I swear it could be him.
Yeah.
Take that one. So here's your grain of salt. I didn't take it with that. But yeah, very interesting nonetheless. It very well could be him. Very well could be.
It very well could be, because especially with her telling you that she can't leave.
Which was, there are locks, for God's sake, at the beginning of each hallway upstairs. There are like big, heavy doors with the shatterproof glass, but they're also padlocked on the outside, meaning they were locked in to these wings, which would never fly today. You know what I mean? But it's, whoa, it's very odd to see this crap. It just, okay, yeah, a lot of stuff has changed since the 1980s and the 1990s, even. Hell, even the early 2000s, a lot of things have changed. But it's very odd to see that.
Now,
So oh, no, I was just going to say that it tracks with the things that they're saying, I can't leave or whatever. That makes sense. Just physically looking at your surroundings, I'm like, that kind of makes sense. It's just odd.
What, of all the different things that you've experienced at the manor, what's the, other than maybe the one that you can explain that's really baffles you?
There was one, okay. There's one thing that I can't put my finger on it, and I don't know why, but it's eluding me and has been for years. But it's the Shadow Man, right? And this Shadow Man, so in this, what we call the newer section, the nursing home wing of Malvern Manor, is the newest section. It was put on in 56. So it's not exactly new, you know what I mean? But it's certainly the newest as far as the structure is concerned. But back there, it's just a very long, expansive hallway. And at the end of one side of this hallway is room number 2. And there's a very tall, black, humanoid figure that will come out of room 2. He'll turn and then run at people. But it's traveling the distance, the better part of 60 feet in less than a second. It is moving so dang fast that you can't fathom what is actually happening. You can't even process what is happening before it's too late. What's interesting about it is seeing this for yourself is terrifying.
Oh, I'd
And
imagine.
but it's also what sends the majority of people out the door. Hell, myself included. I'm not going to brag. You know what I'm saying? No, absolutely. The amount of smoke breaks that I take throughout a day is laughable. I swear to you. But it's interesting because in life, there was a gentleman that occupied room 2 who was 6'7". He was nonverbal, mentally deranged. But his little claim to fame was whenever they were doing bed checks or rounds or whatever you would call that, he would come out of his room, and he would chase the nursing staff, which is fascinating because I'm like, we're seeing very similar behaviors here, right?
Yeah.
He would chase them as far as the kitchen, which is half a house away. So it's quite a distance, but he would chase them to the kitchen, but he would never enter the kitchen. I've always had a problem with that because I'm demented. I think too much sometimes. But I was like, but wait a minute. I was like, but if I were in that room and if I were actively trying to hurt somebody that I was chasing around or what have you, what better place than a kitchen? I could get very creative in a kitchen, but he never did. He never hurt anyone while he was here. He never entered the kitchen. You know what I mean? He would turn and he would go about his business. So I'm like, maybe he was just trying to get a rise out of you. And maybe he's just trying to do the same type of behaviors now. I don't know, but it's fascinating. But yeah, I don't know. It's like,
Probably wants to see how many people you can chase out.
and see, hundreds of people have experienced this phenomenon for themselves. Hundreds. Not a single one of them has been hit or scratched or any of that crap. The second that we notice it and flinch, it's done and over with. It's that quick. And it's one of those things where it's like maybe it is something that would be considered residual. Possibly.
Maybe.
Absolutely. In fact, that's where I lean. The problem then that I have with that is that I can't find the antecedent of that. So the time of day, a weather pattern, a freaking moon phase, nothing is correlating. It's just seemingly happening whenever it wants to. So then I'm like, maybe if it's not residual, it would have to be intelligent in some way, shape, or form. And if it is intelligent, maybe it's so damn intelligent that it's just 5 steps ahead of us at all times. It knows what we're going to do and what questions we're going to ask and what have you, right? Which is also very feasible at the same time. I just don't know which way to go here anymore. So that's the one thing that eludes me more than anything in this building. And it drives me banana sandwich crazy.
Now, I believe that paranormal lockdown that came to the manor.
Yeah. Yeah. Nick and Katrina.
Yeah.
And they were the first that came. And when they were, it's funny because Nick and I are buddies, right? But it's funny because when this dude initially reached out to me, it was on Facebook Messenger and it was Nick Groff. And I was like, okay, I'm sure Nick Groff's going to send me a Facebook message. Whatever. I spaced that crap off for 3 weeks, like 3 weeks. I just ghosted him. I never even opened the dang thing. I was like, nope, whatever. I don't do spam or scams or any of the crap. I don't care. And then I had a buddy reach out to me and he was like, hey, just out of curiosity, did Nick Groff get a hold of you? I go, some jackass saying he's Nick Groff did. I go like, no, dude, that's actually Nick and you probably need to get back to him. I was like, oh, crap. I felt about that big. I was like, oh, man, like I just about screwed everything up for us.
No.
Yeah, but whatever. But it was so cool because that was the first time that we had ever done anything like that here. And so in the back of my brain, I was very nervous just because I was like, what if nothing happens? Fair. What if nothing happens? Yep. And I was like, there's always that fear. But then it was like, are they really locked inside of a place for 3 days? Is that a thing? Are they really doing that? I don't know. Or do they have a cushy hotel room and they just put on the same shirt the next day? You know what I mean? What's really going on? And it was like, they were here the entire time inside this building. And I was like, holy crap. I'm like, okay, that to me spoke to the integrity
Yeah.
of the show, of Nick, of Katrina, of those guys. It was refreshing for me because you don't know paranormal reality TV, how much is reality and how much is a very scripted
Yeah.
thing. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was refreshing to see that happen. So that was good.
Yeah. I was a
Yeah.
big fan of Paranormal Lockdown. I really
Yeah.
liked the show.
It was a
Of
great show.
the different ones that were on. Of course, Ghost Hunters was my all-time favorite.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah. Tried and true. You know what I mean? Tried and true. That was the one thing that I always liked about Ghost Hunters like the OG Ghost Hunters when it first came out. They never had an issue sitting down and just flat out being honest with the homeowner and telling them, we didn't catch anything. We're not saying that you're full of crap or that your house isn't haunted. We just didn't experience anything. And that's okay. It's maybe we revisit this in the future or whatever. And I was like, I always appreciated that.
yeah.
It doesn't have to be all spooktastic all the time. You know what I mean? It doesn't
Oh, yeah.
have to be like that. So that was really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. I'm quite new to the paranormal investigating. I've only
Yeah.
actually one investigation. I did that at the Wildwood.
Heck yeah.
Excellent. It was awesome. I had a great
It
time.
was fun. I
It was
love
so
that.
cool. But
I love that.
but hoping to do more in the future. So, but
Yeah.
no, I enjoyed my first time. I don't know if you knew, I lived in a haunted house for 2 years. So,
Oh,
you know,
shit.
a very active haunted house. So,
Oh, that keep you on your toes, I'm sure.
yeah, yeah, but you know, unlike what some of the TV shows put out, that it you got to get used to it. It really wasn't
Yeah.
like we didn't run out of the house ever. Most of the spirits were, I would say, friendly.
Mhm.
They were there.
Isn't it odd, like, when you are around it and you've immersed yourself in that environment, whether by choice or not, like in your case, not at all, but you're immersed in that situation no matter what, in that environment. And it really does start to feel like it's, oh, that's just so and
Yeah,
and that's just this person or whatever. It's almost like they're a friend or their family, even at that point.
yeah,
There's camaraderie in that because now they're going to start messing with you and you're probably going to start messing with them a little bit too. But it's, I don't know, like, how to describe it. It's for
yeah.
a lot
I
of
don't know
people,
how
but
to either.
no, a lot of people are gonna be like, "Okay, you're off, you're rocker crazy."
Yeah,
But there really is something to it. There really is, and it's interesting.
and that's what really kind of led me to kind of doing the YouTube channel and all of that. Even though this happened 20 years ago, I
Mhm.
finally had the time to kind of sit down, and I started the YouTube channel, then I started the podcast and
Yeah.
exploring more.
Just unpack it. Just
Yep.
sit down and unpack it.
Yep.
That's all you can do. That's cool.
So one thing I wanted to ask was, for someone who wants to visit or investigate the Malvern Manor themselves, what should
Yeah.
they know before they book?
Yeah. There's not a lot of house rules. That's for sure, right? I will never tell anybody how they can or cannot investigate, right? And so I would say show up, bring an open mind, do not run or any of that crap. You know what I'm saying? I promise you. It's, yeah, things are weird because things are moving on their own. That shouldn't happen. An inanimate object should not move on its own, but yet here it is right in front of you. Okay, that's interesting. And it's usually enough to send the majority of people out the door, right? And that's fine. We all have our own threshold. But if you can sit in it, and if you can sit in those moments and just absorb it and then just take another step or two forward, that's when the good stuff happens. You know what I mean? So that's what I would tell people to do.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. With living in the haunted house, my threshold is a little higher, I think.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It
Oh,
would be.
because everyone says, "Oh, how can you go and sit in the basement in the dark?" And I'm like, because that's what I did at the Wildwood. I sat in the basement in the dark on TikTok Live and was,
Because that's what we do. That's the
and
game. You know what I mean? That's what we do.
it was.
Oh, so crazy.
I was having fun. I was awesome, I
Yeah,
thought.
yeah. I love that. I love that.
But now, if they want to book an investigation, where can they? Do you have a website for booking it
Yeah.
with Manor?
So just A for Iowa, obviously, .com. But yeah, malvernmanoria.com. And you can get right to the calendar page. It'll show you the open dates or whatever. And then you select the date that you want. It emails me directly and we get you on the calendar. And we kind of start chatting back and forth a little bit. But yeah, and I send you the welcome packet and we're off and rolling. That's it. It's
Well, that's
pretty
great.
simplistic. Yeah.
Now, I did want to, and I went a little more longer with the Malvern Manor than I had anticipated, but
It's all right.
there was a lot to talk about there. I did want to
I'm a
kind of go
long-winded mamma jamma. That's what happens.
now the historic Fremont County Jail. How did you come
Dude,
to kind of co-own it, or you know?
bro. So, oh my God. Okay. I have an apartment in Sydney, Iowa, right? And so my girlfriend is Tori Westoff, who also runs Sleeper Mortuary in Iola, Kansas, right? Another amazing haunted location. Her and I were looking in Sydney or whatever, and we see this jail that's just been sitting there, and there's nothing, nobody's doing anything with the jail. So I'm like, what the heck? I've grown up in this area. And so I just called the sheriff and I was like, hey, what are you guys doing with the jail? He goes, nothing. And he was like, not a thing. I'm sick and tired of cutting the grass. I wish that the board of commissioners or board of supervisors would move on something and do whatever and repurpose it in some way. And I was like, would you let me in for a night or two? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. Are you going to do that weird crap? And I'm like, yeah, I am, like a lot of it. It's, he was kind enough to just be like, yeah, he had a deputy come meet me, let me into the place or whatever. And I was able to investigate and just put the building through its paces and see what was actually going on here. And it was really fascinating. And I was like, man, there seems like there's potential here. You know what I mean? And so I was like, to heck with it. So Tori and we started going to the supervisor meetings and all that stuff, which are like 9 o'clock in the morning on Wednesdays. And like, God, just whatever. But we ended up going to all these meetings and ultimately we made a pitch. This is what we would like to do for that building. And then they were like, we could put it up for auction. I go, no, I'm out. I'm already out. I'm like, if you put it for auction, I'm out. And I'm like, I don't want to compete with anybody or anything like that. They're like, how about we do a sealed bid? I'm like, now we're talking. We'll do a sealed bid. So I'll submit my bid, which I did later that afternoon because I had already had it drafted and written up. Because let me rephrase, Tori already did the hard work. I'm just the mouth of everything. Okay. So, Tori had everything ready to roll that we submitted later that afternoon. We waited, I think it was a month for them to unseal the bids. We were the only bid.
No. So
That was it. And they thankfully accepted that bid. And we were able to open the doors and start booking people very similar to how we do here at Malvern and at Sleeper Mortuary. So it was
great.
it was cool. It was really
It's
cool.
nice to see you guys took an old location and
Yeah.
have revived it and saved it because a lot of them get torn down.
It sucks because they do. And I'm like, this building it's gorgeous. You know what I mean? For an old derelict type structure.
Yeah.
But it was still in use and functioning until 2014. So it wasn't necessarily that long ago.
Yeah.
I'm like, so the roof's still in good shape. The bones of the building are still in excellent shape. They took care of the place. And so that was nice. But yeah, there's just a lot of stuff that we didn't want to see that building torn down.
Yeah.
And just put another machine shed up or something. You know what I mean? Let's bring in people to the local economy with out of town money that are going to your restaurants and your bars and your grocery store and all of that stuff. They're going everywhere. And let's see what's going to happen, which is hopefully going to be a good boost for the local economy. But it's so good because the historical society is literally right across the street.
Oh,
And it's a beautiful museum and everything that they have with all of this wealth of information and knowledge and stuff. It's such a cool place in a cool atmosphere. And yeah, they've been quite helpful with all of this. And so has the police officers have been very helpful. And even the old dispatchers and things like that have been very helpful in getting this up and going. And they're sharing stories and weird things that happened to them in the building. And I'm like, oh God, I'm like, this is great. So, I think we got lucky with that building. I really
yeah,
do. I
yeah.
really
I,
do.
I think you did. Now, was it always a jail? Was there any behind it?
It was always the jail. It was constructed in 1880. So yeah, like crazy, but it was always the jail. What's really cool about it is this was back in the day, of course, when whoever the sheriff was at the time, their family lived right there. And so we have the area upstairs, which we just call the residence, which is where they lived and where the wife of the sheriff, who was also the caretaker for the prisoners, she was cooking their food for them. And she was all of this stuff. And it's so cool to sit there and experience all this stuff. It's really neat just to see the building and how it was and how everything worked. It was really neat. One day we had a sheriff's deputy stop by and he goes, "Hey, I wanted to tell you guys, they found some stuff in the knoll post at the base of the stairs leading up to the residence." I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "They found some stuff." He goes, "Then they added to it." The sheriff at the time, which was in the mid 90s, added to what was already in the knoll post. I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "Maybe check it out." I was like, "Okay." And so we popped the knoll post off and we started digging through everything. And I was like, it was stuff from 1939. And it was really cool. It was just really cool stuff. And it was just knickknacks and trinkets and things like that. Really neat. And then, of course, they put in stuff from the mid 90s as well, which is
Yeah.
also really cool to see. A lot of that stuff we're going to put into shadow box type stuff and frames and really try to preserve that history because it's too damn cool not to. It's really neat. So
Yeah.
we're having fun uncovering all of this stuff.
Now, have you discovered any if there was any famous prisoners or cases that were at the jail?
As far as the famous prisoners, as of right now, I've got nothing.
Okay.
What I do know, which is also very odd to me, and this was just talking with the Historical Society and all of them. It wasn't Jesse James, but it was his brother Frank. Is that correct? Frank James, I believe.
Yeah.
I think that was his name, and I could be mistaken. But apparently, Jesse James's brother, I believe it was Frank, was also a school teacher in the city of Sydney, where the jail is located, under an assumed name. And I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, so he's using an alias, but still it turns out it was him. And then of course, he leaves. But man, I was like, that is so messed up. There's some really cool things that we have found as far as just stories of things that were happening. And this was, again, back turn of the century type, still very much old West type stuff back then. There was a prisoner that was there, and apparently he had somehow gotten out of the cell. I don't know how he did this or whatever, but got out of the cell. And whoever the deputy was that was working that day, this inmate had taken a leg off of a chair. And I'm assuming that this was more than likely like oak or something very heavy, but just started beating the crap out of this deputy, damn near to death. The only thing that saved this deputy's life was him screaming and people around town hearing him screaming, and they ran to help, thank God, because the gentleman ended up living from all of these injuries and stuff too, which is a feat in and of itself, especially back
Yeah.
then. But man, really interesting things that we have found, and all these stories that we just keep getting. Oh, it's so much fun. It's so much fun. I
Now,
love
what
it.
what kind of paranormal or haunted stuff that are you experiencing there?
So far, we've got shadow figures that are interesting because they're very quick, but they're moving around, especially upstairs inside of the cells where there really isn't daylight, like at all. It's like you're seeing these things move around. It's very interesting. But then also upstairs on the other side of the building, which is the residence, like we're hearing a female, and we're hearing her quite audibly, in fact. So we're just not able to make out anything that she's saying. And so it's like a weird disembodied "Whoa" type of thing. And so it's like you can tell she's speaking. We just don't know what she's saying. I want to find out who this woman is more than anything because I'm like, if it would somehow correlate with maybe potentially the a wife of a former sheriff or something like that, I think it would just be the coolest thing ever if we
That would
could.
be.
Those moments where it's like historical fact and paranormal happenings can shake hands. Oh my God, that's the good stuff for
Yeah,
me anyway.
me too.
That's the
That's my
best.
motto, where history meets the supernatural.
Yes. Yes. And that's just it. It's like where we can correlate these things. And yeah, oh man, that's the fun stuff for me. And so hopefully, eventually, we're able to figure out who this woman is. And I really want to get to know these resident spirits, whoever they may be. They're quite active. It doesn't seem to matter a time of day or anything like that. But man, we have so many ideas of experiments and things like that. I got a good buddy who has been, my buddy Mike has been pivotal in opening this jail and just the work that we've had to put into it, or where Mike has done so much of this. And Mike works for the prison system in Nebraska. So this is right in his wheelhouse. You know what I'm saying? So he loves this stuff. It's really neat. So yeah, we're doing all sorts of fun stuff over there.
Now, I know you haven't had it for long, but has anything
Yeah.
happened to you personally inside the jail that kind of sticks with you?
Yeah. So apparently, and I didn't realize I did this until it's far too late, but when I'm by myself and I'm working or doing whatever, I whistle. And I was like, what the hell? I whistle. And I do that here. I'm walking around, I'm whistling. That's just what I do. And I didn't realize I did it, but this is what I do. So I'm whistling one day at the jail. And then I stopped whistling or whatever to dig at what I was doing. I was looking for a tool of some sort. And I hear whistling from the top of the steps in the large jail cell that it would hold 8 prisoners at the same time. And I was like, whoa. I'm like, I just heard a whistle. And so I whistled back. Nothing happened, of course, but I was like, whoa, what the hell was that? Because it certainly wasn't me, and it certainly wasn't an echo or anything like that. Certainly not. But man, that got me. Now, there have been a few times, and this was one of the first times that I did a live stream from the jail before we even owned the dang thing, because it was one of those nights that I was let in because the sheriff trusted me enough to do. But
Yeah.
I was up there, and all I said was, not a lot of people come to visit you these days, do they? And it was a disembodied male voice in the same cell that I was in. And it was quite loud. And it just goes, no. And I was like, what? Every hair on my body was just on end. Oh, it was fascinating. So I was like, God, there really is something to this. And we just need to know what makes them tick. So now I have my buddy Travis. He makes these really cool REM pods that are cigarettes. So it's a pack of cigarettes that I have smoked, and he just puts the guts of a REM pod in the pack of cigarettes, and it's now a trigger object, right? So bring those up, and those things are going crazy. And we have an old whiskey bottle that does the exact same thing, that if something were to touch it or get close to it, it acts like a REM pod, and it would alarm, and it would tell you that something is close to it in proximity. So the whiskey bottle and the cigarette packs have been pivotal in all of that. But I was like, there was even one night that I had that, it's called the flux device, which is that little triangle that has the yes, no lights on it. And,
Yeah.
but it also tracks movement. And I had that setting up in the jail cell one evening, and I'm sitting all the way back in a corner, just asking questions on this little bench that's there. And that thing went off, signifying that something to the right of that device had gone closer to it. It was like, dig it, dig it, dig it, dig it, dig it. I was like, wait a minute. That never happens. So I was like, that was really neat. I think whoever they are, whoever these spirits may be, I think they are still getting used to the equipment. I think they're still getting used to what is this weird looking crap? Like, why is this all flashy and light up and it looks like a Christmas tree? What is that all about? And how are you able to communicate with me and all of that? And I think they're trying to figure it out. It seems to be working. The tripwires seem to do really well in that building as well, which is really cool. But man, it's been a lot of fun just getting to know what makes them tick. And I think they're still figuring out what makes me tick. And yeah, I'm sure I'm in for a few jump scares here in the near future,
Yeah, they're
probably,
probably trying to figure out how they can make you run.
which is fine. It's fine. Because, yeah, it's kind of comical when I run anyway. So, like, just let it happen. Let it happen.
So, how does investigating the jail feel different than investigating Malvern Manor?
Like, here at the manor, depending on where you are, is depending on what you're going to be getting, right? All of that stuff. But the jail feels just heavy. It's a different feeling. Like here, it's, oh, yeah, you could walk into Susie's room and you could color a picture and everything's fine and lighthearted and great. The jail, it's just like everything is just intense and like on edge. And it's like, you don't want to say the wrong thing because I don't want to upset anybody. I'm not in that game. I don't care to do that. But it's so I'm trying to push, but I'm also trying to be civil and kind at the same time. And I'm not trying to piss them off in any way. But I eventually I probably will. Not on purpose or anything like that. But yeah. So it is a different feeling from there to here. It is certainly different. In a good way. It's just more variety, I guess. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was just curious. I was assuming there'd be a different feeling.
Yeah.
Kind of a different setting.
It is. And I think it was so funny. My buddy Mike, again, who works for the prison system and all that, he kind of made this joke to me: is everybody in prison's innocent? I was like, what? He's like, yeah, just ask him. Everybody's innocent. I'm like, oh, okay. So I just laughed it off or whatever. But I used that in a line of questioning that I was doing one evening. And I was like, just out of curiosity, I'm like, you have to be innocent, right? And I was being serious. I was like, you're probably innocent, aren't you? You didn't do anything, right? Everything's going off. Like, well, I'm like, holy shit. Like, what? Like, how? I'm like, what? I'm like, okay. I'm like, so now we've got like up in the big cell, we've got like checkers, we have dominoes, which is a big thing in prison as well.
Yeah.
And we've got like prison cookbooks and things like that for how to make your own ramen in prison, all this stuff. Really cool stuff. And so we're trying to use these objects to our advantage so we can maybe hopefully strike up a conversation or just any form of narrative with these spirits. It's been really cool.
Now, what can people expect if they book a tour or an investigation at the jail?
A lot of the same. Where it's basically like you get on the website and pick your date, it emails us, and that's it. It's really cool. But as far as what to expect, it's grungy. Like, it's grungy. Now we have a nice kitchen area set up. We have a nice clean bathroom, of course. But other than that, like, it's exactly the way we found it, just like Malvern Manor. We haven't done anything other than run a couple vacuum cleaners and wipe down surfaces, of course. But other than that, there are things that we are still finding. It's weird. things that are underneath the jail cell bunks. Find it. There's a pair of shoes under there. We've left them. We're not touching this stuff. Like in hopes that we can all use this to all correlate data and try to figure out what is the cause of this haunting. Who are these people? What's their story? And just go from there.
Yeah, that's great. I think we're just a little bit over our hour, so
Yeah,
I'm gonna kind of wrap up. I thank you for coming on, though.
fun, bro. Thank you.
Yes, I had a great time. And for everyone out there, just a second here. Whoops. Of course, I can edit this.
That's how it goes.
Remember, history never truly dies. It just finds new ways to haunt us. Until next time, keep digging into the darkness. If you enjoyed this today, please don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button and the notification bell so you won't miss any episodes. I drop new episodes every Wednesday and Saturday. And like I just said, until next time, keep digging into the darkness.